Hey everybody, and welcome to this video where I'll be showing you my progress with the Noodle Better Backend and the app that I've been developing for a client recently called Tagizer. And I want to show you how far I've got just with some really simple workflows using n8n and Noodle to be able to produce these labels that you're seeing in front of you. So this is using the Noodle Better Backend, which I presented in the last video in this series, which is a backend composed of Parse server for the database, MongoDB Parse server, and using Redis faster, which doesn't matter at this scale, but it's good to have it in place already. MinIO for an S3 compatible file storage, traffic is for routing, Noodl for debugging, and n8n for the cloud workflows, which replaces the Noodl Cloud functions, which were quite limited, and I much prefer using n8n. n8n generate what you see in front of you, which is a way to generate labels for kids' clothes, and background. So let's just dive in and see how it works. The first thing I want to look at is when we're making the call, what happens in terms of cloud functions, because the big change with the Noodle Better Backend is using n8n cloud functions instead of Noodle Cloud functions. So I've developed and I've shared in the Low Code Foundation Discord, I've shared, which I'll link to in the description of the video if you want it, prefab for an n8n template component. So basically all you need with n8n, it's much like Noodle, is just there's input and there's output. So the webhook node in an n8n, so it could be an object with lots of different things in it, but it's an object, processes it and then outputs an object at the end. So that's what we're looking at here, is developing an object by just creating properties, whatever properties we need, adding those as component inputs as our template. So this is the AI template that I made. And it runs that object into a n8n core component that will process the request and output a response or an error. And all that's doing is taking the object and passing it through into an API call. I've set it up so that I can use, I can choose what the webhook ID and put it in test mode. So test mode is either when you're running n8n workflows, either they're running the production version, which you don't. These are successful executions for test workflow, and then you need to use the test webhook. It adds webhook test instead of webhook onto the URL. So let's do that just to see how it works. We're going to take webhook test. We're going to hit test webhook in here, where it's going to run a HTTP request to the image generation OpenAI endpoint. It's going to use my OpenAI credentials, which I've inputted here, which is a handy way of keeping everything in the same place with n8n, is you can input your own credential, your own body, which is with the prompt, where I insist on certain things so that DALL-E will not correct it too much and output something that won't work. I need something that has just a singular character with a white background, because then I can tell my function in Noodle, which I'll show you later, to remove that white background just to get this transparent image I can put on top of the label, like a PNG. We're using DALL-E 3. It's going to be the smallest size available because I don't really need a big size. Can't go smaller than this, unfortunately. And I just want one image returned. Why am I doing this in an HTTP node? Because the OpenAI node from n8n is good, but there was something that it didn't do well, and I can't exactly remember what. No, I can't remember what it was, but there was something that I didn't like the way that it worked, or the way that it returned information or something like that. So I switched over to the HTTP, which you can do with pretty much any of the integrations in n8n. You can replace them with your own code or your own HTTP requests or whatever you want. So let's And then it's either going to output an error. By the way, that's a really handy thing I didn't know existed for a long time. In the settings of the node, you can tell it to, when there's an error in this node, it either stops or continues and just doesn't care, or it continues using an error output. So it takes a specific branch when there's an error, which I really like. So I use that all the time. So that'll return a JSON from, if there's an error, from this node saying whatever the error was with the code 500. And then on the side of Noodle, I take that error code and use that to either output failure or success. So if it's not, if it's 500, I'm going to output failure. If it's 200, anything else, I'm going to output success. So that's just how I managed to set that up. Or it outputs success and just says that it just returns the first item to Noodle. So let's see how that looks when we actually do it. Test that. We're going to enter an astronaut, and it's for my daughter Ellie. So it sends the call, just a Lottie pop-up, sends the call to n8n. n8n is processing it. It takes about 12 seconds for OpenAI to generate these images, and it's outputted success. So we can actually go, the fact that we've done this in the test editor means that now we can go through it and tweak based on the values. So we can see, okay, theme, astronaut, user ID, okay, webhook URL, so we can look through all the different things that came through and then tweak what we have. So say, okay, the body was theme. So go in here and double check that that's the right thing that we're doing. And it'll show you what the placeholders you've put in are actually evaluated as, because we're in the test editor. It'll take the test data you sent and use that as data to complete your workflows and show you how the workflow was completed. So super useful. Also the fact that just, not showing off, but like just to show how much I love n8n. When you're doing these placeholders in an expression field, you do double curly braces, and it actually comes up with all the different options that you have. So you can say, okay, I want to take the webhook output, and then I do dot, and it shows me what is available, just like any sort of JavaScript console or whatever. I want to take the item that came in from the webhook. You can see the evaluation, like, what do I want from that? I want the JSON, so I'm going to do dot JSON. Okay, what do I want from the JSON? Not the headers, not the host. I want the body, which is down there. And if you need this, you can like go back to the webhook step and actually just look at it as well and be like, oh, okay, this is the JSON here. I need the body theme. So I need JSON dot body dot theme, and then I get astronaut. So it's really, I love the visual. I love that it's visual and also it's closer to classic coding at the same time. It's just right up my alley. It's exactly what I need. So that's already something really cool. And then we can see what the output was. Either it's an error branch that shows us what the error was, or it's the success branch where we see the response from ChatGPT. So it shows us what it revised our prompt to, because DALL-E is programmed to revise prompts for safety. And then it shows us, and I've asked it to return a URL. Yeah, no, I didn't. I think by default it returns a URL, but you can ask it with a specific property to return the base 64, and then you can treat it just as like your own image. But I got the URL because I actually don't want to store the ChatGPT version. It's only temporary. So I'm just getting the URL. It's returning that to Noodle. So in the Noodle side, my response is there, data from the response, first item, revised prompt URL. So I'm going to take that into my main page. And then what I'm doing is taking the response, as you can see, extracting the data, the 0th item, .url. So it takes, there's always just one item. So it just takes the URL to the image. And then it runs this function. This is a pretty funky function ChatGPT dreamt up, which is, seems to be a pretty standard way to do image editing on the fly in the front end, which is to create an image and sort of fake load the image. It doesn't really load, sort of loads in the background, and then do some image manipulation on it. So this is doing something where it calculates what like the background limits are going to be in terms of where it's going to turn pixels transparent. And then it does something as well with the, what was it? flood fill. It's something about it's looking for cells to make transparent, but it's also looking for where the color kind of becomes less than white. So like at the edges of the character, it'll stop its operation, something like that. So it works really well, because otherwise you can see that worked pretty well. Before, what it was doing was, this was all white. Before, what it was doing was it would make this bit and this bit and this bit, and the eyes would also become transparent because it was just changing all white parts transparent. So the handy thing about that snippet of code is that, which I'll put in the, where would I put that? I'll put it in the Noodle noob, I'll put it in our, I had a Noodle noob handbook, which I'll link to in the description, but I also have a community platform on Fibery, which has all of these little code snippets in it. So I'll put it in there. I'll put links in the description anyway, if you want this stuff for yourself. But yeah, it works really well. It takes away the white background that was on there pretty effectively and just leaves a little astronaut dude. That's one of the better examples that I've got. You know, some of them come out with weird artifacts like this, where DALL-E has not done one image, but has done several. But it depends. You really get hit or miss. Sometimes it's perfect. Like that is just the perfect children's clothes label. And that one's pretty amazing as well. So it's just like, it's maybe, yeah, it's about 50-50. You can see, like that was when I was using DALL-E 2. The difference between DALL-E 2 and DALL-E 3 is pretty spectacular. Anyway, it was just a test. All right, so that has taken the image, it has done the operation on it to turn it into a kind of PNG. The raw data is outputted, base64 data, goes into my script, which is setting up a what was it called? Fabric.js. So there's a Fabric.js canvas here normally, and it's just so that it can kind of position things on the canvas, like it positions the image at the left side, it positions the text at the right side, and then it just immediately exports that to a file. So it turns it into a file format. Base64 goes to file format. So, and then that's, I don't know which one is the most recent one, probably. Oh, that's the first one. Probably this one. No, I don't know which. I don't know if it's organized by date or not. Anyway, they all go in here, and then that's where they're accessed from when I call them from. So I create a database entry for that file with the owner of that file, and then that means I can see like all the historic files. So I want to have like a community part and a my labels part. Like my labels, the ones you've generated. Community is just everybody's labels, so that everybody can see the labels and think, oh, that was a really good one that anonymous person generated, so let's download that and try it out. So yeah, that's going pretty good so far. Yeah, I think that's pretty good in terms of how the backend is working. So like I was saying last time, in a deployed version, this would be the n8n running on its own somewhere. MinIO would be replaced by an S3 bucket like AWS, which obviously just cost-wise it's way cheaper, or Google Storage or Azure Storage. And we would hook that up with Parse, with their S3 connector. And so in production, you would have the same services, but this would be hosted on its own. Parse server would be hosted somewhere else, and MinIO would turn into an S3 bucket. So, but it's going pretty well so far. The next step is to try to get, because I'm running it locally at the moment, the next step is to try to get a prototype version online so that I can start showing it off. And so that's going to involve trying to set up my own cloud server with all these different services in it. So I'll get back to that and I'll let you know how it goes. And I'm hoping I can offer the Noodle Better Backend soon as a free trial or free tier test version on my own hosting, on the Low Code Foundation hosting, or OpenNoodl hosting. So I'll keep you up to date on that. And yeah, but it just, I think it's a good example to show how you can make a really simple Noodle app, and it can be with a fully open source backend that's 100% under your control, because it's not, you know, some packaged thing that Noodle originally created that we can't really edit because we don't understand it. So I hope this convinces you that n8n is a good choice. I'll be sharing in future videos, I'll be sharing how I converted the classic password reset request cloud functions from Noodle into a n8n function. The one that checks if their email is real, generates a token, sends back the token, puts it into the Parse database. So I'll show all that stuff in another video, but I've done pretty well so far converting over from the cloud functions from the Noodle backend into the Better backend. And I hope that's convinced you to maybe think about doing the same. And if you have any questions, please reach out, or otherwise stay subscribed to the channel, and I'll keep publishing new videos to show you updates on that. I hope you enjoyed it, and take care. See you in the next one.